She didn't know the man she was hiding behind was a killer until her husband went pale and stumbled backward. That's when the stranger holding her whispered, "He'll never touch you again." It should have felt like rescue. But when Nikolai Vale finally let her go and walked into the rain, he left something behind. A napkin. 3 words. And suddenly she understood. She wasn't saved. She was claimed. If this story already has you hooked, click subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from because the next part will leave you breathless. The restaurant smelled like spilled whiskey and panic. Lila Hart pushed through the crowd, her hands trembling so hard she could barely hold her purse. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, none of it sounded real anymore. Just echoes over the thundering beat of her heart. Her husband was close. Too close. She could hear his voice cutting through the rain outside, low, furious, slurred. Lila! She didn't think. She ran. She slipped through the back door of the restaurant, dragging the wet air in with her. Waiters turned to look, startled, but she didn't stop. She just kept moving past the bar, past the rows of tables glittering with candlelight, straight into the corner of the room where shadows pooled. She needed somewhere to disappear. Anywhere, anyone. And that's when she saw him. A man sitting alone at a booth near the window. Tall, silent, sharp jaw, black coat, cold eyes that didn't belong in this world. His presence didn't fit the restaurant's soft music, it bent it. People glanced at him and looked away fast. Lila didn't know why. She only knew she was out of time. Her husband's voice boomed again from the front entrance. Lila! She darted forward and crouched behind the stranger's chair, her breath shaking, her pulse screaming in her ears. He didn't turn around right away. But when he did, his voice was quiet, low, like a threat wrapped in silk. You've got 3 seconds to tell me why you're hiding behind me. Her throat closed. Please, don't move. He'll see me. He glanced toward the door. Who? My husband, she whispered. He's looking for me. Please. He studied her not with concern, but calculation. His silence stretched until the footsteps neared the table. Then, before she could blink, his arm reached back. He grabbed her wrist, pulled her sharply forward, and she landed in his lap. The move was so fast it stole her breath. His arm came around her waist, holding her still, every muscle hard and tense. You picked the wrong man to hide behind, he murmured, his breath brushing her ear. She froze, eyes wide, realizing what she'd done, who she'd chosen. Her husband appeared in the doorway then, soaked and raging. He scanned the room, and his gaze landed on her. But when he saw the man holding her, his face drained of color. The stranger didn't even look at him. He just tilted his head slightly, his voice calm and lethal. Is there a problem? The bartender stopped mid-pour. Conversations went silent. Her husband hesitated, then took a step back. He knew that voice. Everyone in this city did. Nikolai Vale. The man whose name made police go quiet. No problem, her husband stammered, retreating fast. My mistake. Nikolai's eyes followed him until the door shut behind him. Only then did he release her. Lila stood too quickly, dizzy with adrenaline. I'm sorry, she stuttered. I didn't know who you were. He looked at her for a long time, expression unreadable. Then, quietly, next time, choose better places to run. She nodded, too stunned to speak. Thank you, she whispered. He stood, towering, his voice lower now. Don't thank me. Why not? He looked back, once his eyes dark and deliberate. Because if your husband comes looking again, he won't find you first. I will. Then he walked into the rain, no glance back, no hesitation. Lila sank into the nearest chair, shaking. The room spun. The world outside didn't feel real anymore. When she finally stumbled home that night, her apartment door was cracked, kicked open. He'd been here. But the silence that followed felt different this time. Not empty, watched. And when she hung up her coat, a folded napkin fell from the pocket. She picked it up, fingers trembling, and read 3 words written in elegant script. For 22 days, the napkin sat on her kitchen counter like a warning she couldn't throw away. Next time knock. 3 words that lived rent-free in her head, that she hated for how safe they made her feel. She had replayed that night so many times that she could almost still hear his voice, low, quiet, promising, and threatening all at once. But people like him didn't come back. Men like Nikolai Vale didn't exist in the same world as small, trembling waitresses trying to survive on tips and broken sleep. Or so she thought. Until she noticed the car. It started like a bad dream. At first, she dismissed it. A black car parked across the street, tinted windows. Idle engine. She lived in the city. Expensive cars came and went every day. But this one didn't move. Not when the street light flickered. Not when she left for work. Not when she came home. It was there the next day. And the one after that. By the 3rd morning, she'd convinced herself she was imagining things. Paranoia had become her morning coffee. She drank it bitter, with too many what-ifs. But when she stepped out of her apartment that night after closing at the diner, the car's headlights flicked on. Her stomach dropped. The window rolled down halfway, slow enough to make her blood run cold. You shouldn't walk alone. That voice. It was quiet but sharp, a voice that carried power without needing to raise itself. Lila froze. Her hand tightened around her purse. "Mr. Vale," she whispered. Nikolai stepped out of the car, dressed in black from head to toe. The same dangerous calm radiated off him, that slow, deliberate confidence of someone who'd never needed to explain himself. He looked different now. No blood, no weakness, just clean control. The kind of man the world revolved around without realizing it. Her voice cracked when she finally found it. "What are you doing here?" He shut the car door gently, like even the air had to obey him. "Making sure your husband didn't try again." "He didn't," she said quickly, her pulse racing. "I know." "Then why are you here?" "Because you didn't lock your door." Her stomach twisted. "What?" He didn't blink. "You didn't lock your door last night." I did," she stammered. "No," he said, stepping closer. "You closed it, but you didn't lock it." Her mouth went dry. "How do you know that?" He smirked faintly, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "Because I opened it." The words hit like ice. You broke into my apartment?" "Broke in?" he repeated, as if amused by her choice of words. "If I wanted to break in, you wouldn't have a door left to argue about." "Why would you even—" "Because you're bad at hiding," he cut in flatly. "And bad at surviving. You have no alarm, no cameras, no lock worth the metal it's made of. If your husband found you before I did, you'd be dead by now." Her breath hitched, half fear, half fury. "You don't get to walk into my home and tell me how to survive." Something flickered in his gaze. Not anger, something darker. Curiosity. He took one deliberate step closer. "You opened your door for a bleeding man with a gunshot wound, Miss Hart. You think you understand danger, but you don't." "Then teach me," she snapped before she could stop herself. The challenge lingered in the air between them. For the first time, he smiled slow and dangerous. "Careful," he murmured. "I might." They stood there, inches apart, the hum of the city around them. Lila was trembling, but not just from fear anymore. Something about the way he looked at her, cold, analytical, like he was memorizing her heartbeat, made her feel like she was standing too close to fire. Finally, she found her voice again. "What do you want from me?" "I want you alive," he said simply. Her brow furrowed. That's it? He nodded once. For now. The words sounded like a threat and a promise at the same time. Lila took a breath, forcing calm. Then thank you. But you don't have to protect me. I'm not your problem. His expression didn't change. You made yourself my problem the night you pulled me off that floor. You were dying, she said. I couldn't just leave you there. That's what everyone else did, he replied. His voice softened for the first time, so quiet she almost missed it. Everyone but you. She didn't know what to say. For a moment, the world seemed to still around them. A taxi passed, headlights slicing through the dark, rain hissing on asphalt. Then he turned and nodded toward the car. Get in! Her eyes widened. Excuse me? You're being watched, he said, nodding toward a shadow across the street. A man leaned against a lamppost, pretending to check his phone. They've been there for 3 days. She followed his gaze, her breath caught. Who are they? People who want to know if I'm still alive. You saved me now. They think you know something. You don't. But that won't stop them. So what happens if I stay here? He met her eyes. You disappear. Her pulse jumped. And if I go with you? His mouth curved faintly. You disappear safely. Against her better judgment, she got into the car. The leather was cold against her palms. The smell of expensive cologne and danger filled the air. As they drove, she watched the city slide past all neon lights and wet glass. Where are we going? She asked finally. Someplace safe. Your definition of safe probably involves guns. He gave a small laugh. You're not wrong. And I'm supposed to trust you? You already did once, he said. It worked out for me. His honesty startled her. And for me? He didn't answer. The silence was louder than the rain. They stopped in front of a glass high-rise that looked like it belonged to a different world. Whose place is this? She asked quietly. Mine. Her heart sank. Of course it is. He led her inside an elevator that opened directly into a penthouse glowing with city lights. It was sterile and beautiful, everything in shades of black, gray, and glass. No warmth, no life. Just control. She turned slowly. You call this a safe house? I call it a fortress, he said. No one gets in here without me knowing. And how long am I supposed to stay in your fortress? He poured a drink at the bar, his movements deliberate. Until I decide it's safe. Lila folded her arms. You're unbelievable. He looked up, amused. You keep saying that like it's an insult. You can't just decide where I live. I just did. She stared at him, breath shaking. You don't own me. Something in his expression shifted. No, he said softly, but your enemies think I do. So until I can prove otherwise, you're safer pretending that's true. That night, he gave her a room, minimal, spotless, with a view of the city. She didn't sleep. Every creak in the walls sounded like a secret. Every silence between them felt like a test. When she finally ventured into the hallway at dawn, he was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city below. Don't you ever sleep? She asked quietly. He didn't look at her. Sleep is for men who aren't being hunted. She stepped closer. And what am I? He finally turned to her, eyes sharp but unreadable. Collateral. Her breath hitched. That's not funny. I wasn't joking. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, she saw something raw, something human, buried beneath the violence and control. He looked away first. You can make breakfast, he said, almost absently. There's food in the fridge. You want me to cook for you now? She asked incredulously. He smiled without humor. You need to do something normal before you lose your mind. She did. She cooked, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee, hands still trembling. He didn't touch the food, just watched her quietly, like the act of her moving around his kitchen was somehow fascinating. When she finally broke the silence, her voice was small. "What happens after this?" He stood, setting his untouched cup aside. "After this?" "Yes, when your enemies stop looking. When it's safe again." He hesitated, and that hesitation told her more than words ever could. "Then," he said quietly, "you walk away, and I don't come looking." It sounded like mercy. It felt like a lie. Because when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see a man who let things go. She saw a man who kept them. That night, when she lay in the unfamiliar bed, she found another note slipped under the door. Same handwriting. "You're safe, don't make me prove it." And she realized something she should have known from the start. Nikolai Vale didn't just save lives. He took possession of them. And now, whether she liked it or not, hers was his. The first morning she woke up in Nikolai Vale's penthouse, it felt like waking inside a dream she didn't remember choosing. The sheets were soft. The air smelled faintly of leather and rain. The skyline cut through the glass wall, the city moving below like an ocean of light. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the folded suit jacket draped over a chair, the untouched coffee still steaming on the counter, and remembered. She wasn't home. She was somewhere safe. Except safety, she was starting to realize, didn't always mean freedom. Nikolai wasn't there when she walked into the living room. His phone sat on the table beside a loaded gun. Both looked equally casual, like part of the decor. She tried the front door again, still locked. No handle from the inside, just a sleek panel that needed a code she didn't have. Her pulse quickened. She looked around. The walls were too thick, the windows sealed. The cameras near the ceiling blinked, faintly red. "You're awake," his voice came from behind her. She jumped, spinning around. Nikolai stood in the doorway, tie loose, hair still damp from a shower. No sound had warned her he was there. "You have cameras in the bedrooms," she said. He didn't deny it. "I like to know what's mine is safe. I'm not yours." He arched a brow, the faintest smile curling his lips. "Then why are you still here?" Lila clenched her fists. "Because you locked the door." He didn't answer, just moved past her, picking up the gun from the table and checking the chamber with a smooth click. "Where are you going?" she asked. He holstered it under his jacket. "To fix the mess you made." Her jaw tightened. "The mess I made?" He turned, meeting her glare evenly. "The night you pulled me off that floor, I stopped being a ghost. My enemies know I'm alive again, and now they know your face." She swallowed. "I didn't mean for any of that." "You saved me," he interrupted. "Good intentions don't erase consequences." The elevator doors opened, and two men in dark suits entered without knocking. One carried a folder, the other a gun. They nodded at Nikolai, then gave her a quick glance before looking away, the kind of look men give when they're told not to look at all. "Mr. Vale," one said, placing the folder on the table. "The informants confirmed someone selling information about the girl." Lila froze. "What?" Nikolai didn't look at her. "Who?" "We're still tracing it. But it's connected to the Santoro syndicate." Nikolai flipped through the folder. "Then start with their safe house on 18th. I want everyone inside breathing long enough to answer one question." The man hesitated. "And after they answer?" Nikolai looked up. "You've worked for me long enough to know the rest." The man nodded grimly and left. Lila's voice trembled. "You're going to kill them?" He glanced at her. "Would you prefer I ask nicely?" Her throat tightened. "You don't have to drag more people into this because of me." "I don't drag people into anything," he said, slipping his jacket on. "They walk in by choice, just like you. I didn't choose this." He paused at the door, his back to her. You chose to save me, he said quietly. That was the first choice. Everything after is just consequence. Then he was gone. Lila stood there for what felt like hours. The silence pressed down on her until she couldn't breathe. When she finally gathered the courage, she began searching for an exit. Every window was reinforced glass. Every vent sealed. Every door led to another locked space. Even the phone on the counter required a passcode. She tried the elevator. It didn't move. A digital panel flashed access denied. Her chest tightened. She was trapped. The realization hit like a second heartbeat fast, panicked, unstoppable. Nikolai Vale hadn't rescued her. He'd relocated her. By the time he returned that evening, the skyline had turned orange with sunset. Lila was sitting on the couch, knees drawn to her chest. He walked in like nothing was wrong, coat off, sleeves rolled up, faint traces of blood on his knuckles. You're bleeding, she said quietly. Not mine, he replied. She flinched. That's supposed to make me feel better? He poured a drink. It should. You're insane, she said. He didn't disagree. You're still here. Because I can't leave. He looked at her then, really looked, the tension between them thick and electric. Do you want to? He asked. Lila hesitated. Every instinct screamed yes. But another part, the part that remembered his hand around her waist, the way her husband's face had drained of color, whispered no. I want my life back, she said finally. Nikolai stepped closer. And what kind of life was that? A man who hit you? A job that broke you? A city that didn't care if you lived or died? She blinked back tears. At least it was mine. He crouched in front of her then, voice low. You think you want freedom. What you really want is peace. I can give you that. Her breath shook. Peace doesn't come with locks. He leaned closer, his words almost a whisper. No, but safety does. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then he stood and turned away. Dinner's at 8. That night, the penthouse was quieter than usual. No footsteps, no phones ringing, just the hum of the city below. Lila sat at the table alone. The meal in front of her looked untouched. When she finally saw him again, he was standing by the window, staring at the skyline like he was trying to read it. She walked over slowly. You ever get tired of pretending? He didn't turn. Pretending what? That you don't care about anything. He looked at her, then a flash of something dangerous and human in his eyes. Care gets people killed. You mean love? She said quietly. He didn't answer. After a long silence, he said, You shouldn't say things like that to men like me. Why? Because we don't forget them. Her pulse jumped. He turned away again. You should sleep. You have work tomorrow. I don't have a job anymore. You scared my manager when your men followed me there. He didn't look surprised. Good, you don't belong there. And where do I belong, Mr. Vale? He smiled faintly. Here. For now. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window staring at the lights. At midnight, her phone buzzed, the black phone he'd left her. One message. They know your name now. Don't open the blinds. She turned off the lamp instantly, heart racing. Outside, headlights passed slow, deliberate. A van rolled by, then stopped at the corner. She held her breath, watching from the shadows. Then, a second message. Go to the bedroom, stay low. She obeyed without thinking, crawling across the cold floor. The sound of car doors opening echoed faintly from the street. Then another sound, quieter, closer. The elevator. Her phone buzzed again. Don't scream. The door slid open. Heavy footsteps entered. For a second, her blood ran cold. Then she heard his voice. It's handled. She exhaled shakily. Handled? He walked in, jacket damp from rain, hands clean but eyes cold. They won't bother you again. You killed them? They weren't planning to send flowers. She pressed a hand over her mouth. I didn't ask you to do this. He looked at her evenly. You didn't have to. I didn't want anyone to die because of me. You think you can help a man like me and walk away untouched? His tone snapped sharp now. You put your hand in my world, Lila. It stains. It spreads. You can't wash it off. Tears burned her eyes. I didn't ask for this debt. He stared at her, breathing hard, then softened just slightly. No, he said quietly, but now that it exists, it's mine to pay. Later that night, when the city finally fell silent again, Lila found another folded note on the counter. She didn't see him leave it there. It read, You saved my life once, I'll spend the rest of mine saving yours. And under it, a single drop of dried blood, not hers. That's when she realized something terrifying. Nikolai Vale wasn't protecting her because he owed her. He was protecting her because he needed to. Because somewhere between her act of kindness and his world of violence, something inside him had changed, and she didn't know whether to fear it or crave it. If you had to choose between freedom and protection, which would you pick? Comment below. Your choice says more than you think. The next few days passed like smoke, thick, suffocating, and impossible to hold on to. Lila stopped counting time by hours. Instead, she counted by sounds, the click of security locks, the hum of Nikolai's low phone calls in Russian, the soft scrape of his shoes as he paced the penthouse long after midnight. He moved like a shadow through the glass and steel, disciplined, deliberate, untouchable. And yet, she could feel him everywhere. He didn't talk much, but he watched. Every time she poured coffee, every time she flinched at a sound from the street, every time she looked like she might ask him something and then didn't. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something worse. A gravitational pull she couldn't fight. On the fourth night, the rain returned heavy, relentless, a storm beating against the windows like the city itself was warning her to run. But where would she go? Nikolai hadn't forbidden her from leaving, but he didn't have to. There were cameras in the hallways, unmarked cars parked outside the building. Every exit felt like a dare. She tried to distract herself with cleaning. The marble countertops were spotless, but she scrubbed anyway, trying to silence the loop in her head, the things he'd said, the things she'd seen. You can't help a man like me and walk away untouched. You saved me, now I owe you. You're safer pretending you belong to me. Those words clung to her like smoke. Lila. His voice snapped her back to reality. She turned, startled. He was leaning against the doorframe, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loose. The storm's reflection cut across his face, one side in shadow, the other lit by lightning. I didn't hear you come in, she said. He smiled faintly. That's the point. You like sneaking up on people? I like seeing how they react when they think they're alone. That's creepy. Effective, he countered. She crossed her arms. You don't have to keep me under surveillance, you know. I'm not your prisoner. He raised a brow. A prisoner has a cell. You have a penthouse. It feels the same, she snapped. His gaze sharpened, not angry, but intrigued. Do you really think I'm keeping you here for fun? I think you like control. His mouth curved, the faintest smirk. And what if I do? She met his stare. Then you're proving me right. For a second, the air between them went electric tight, alive. Nikolai stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until she could feel the heat radiating off him. You have no idea what control looks like, he said softly. You mistake it for cruelty. Then what is it? Discipline. Of who? He tilted his head slightly. Both of us. They stood there for what felt like forever. Then the lights flickered, thunder cracked outside, and she flinched. He noticed. You're still afraid of storms. How do you know that? She whispered. I pay attention. Her lips parted, but no words came. He stepped even closer, voice lowering. Your hands shake when thunder hits. You hold your breath before lightning. It's a habit. She blinked fast. You shouldn't notice things like that. I notice everything. Another flash of light cut across the room, and she flinched again, this time into him. He caught her wrist gently before she could pull away. Don't run. I'm not. Don't lie, he murmured. You're shaking. His hand moved up her arm, slow and sure, tracing goosebumps along her skin. The contact was both terrifying and grounding. Let me go, she breathed. He didn't. Tell me to stop. I just did. His eyes darkened. No, you didn't. Lightning flashed again. This time she didn't flinch. Because his other hand was already at the back of her neck, his thumb brushing against her jaw, steadying her. You shouldn't. I shouldn't, he agreed. But he didn't step back. Instead, he said quietly, almost regretfully, every time I look at you, I remember what weakness feels like, and I can't decide if that makes me want to protect you or destroy you. Her pulse stuttered. You can't say things like that. Then stop making me. He leaned in just enough for his breath to brush her lips, and that was all it took. Her restraint cracked first. Their mouths met in a collision of fear and hunger, the kind that didn't ask permission, the kind born from weeks of tension and silence. His hand gripped her waist, pulling her closer until she could feel the strength he kept buried under all that control. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was inevitable. When he finally pulled back, his voice was rough, uneven. That shouldn't have happened. Then why did it? Because I wanted it to. She looked up at him, trembling. And now what? He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Now you pretend it didn't. For the next 2 days, he barely looked at her. No more lingering glances. No more late-night conversations. Just silence and distance. He buried himself in phone calls, meetings, orders, the business of violence that made men like him rich and hated. But silence didn't erase what had happened. It only magnified it. Because every time she passed him in the hallway, the air seemed to hum. Every glance felt like a question neither of them wanted to answer. Until one night, she snapped. He was in his office, back turned, talking to someone over the phone in Russian. His tone was clipped, sharp, dangerous. When he hung up, she was standing in the doorway. You can ignore me all you want, she said, but it won't change what happened. He didn't turn. You assume I'm ignoring you. You haven't said 2 words to me in days. That's restraint. That's avoidance. He turned then, eyes dark. Maybe it's self-preservation. From what? Me? From the part of me that doesn't stop once it starts. Her pulse jumped. You think you're some kind of monster? He smiled bitterly. I don't think. I know. She stepped closer. You're not the only one with scars, Nikolai. That made him look up. Truly, look. What did he do to you? Lila froze. What did your husband do that makes you flinch every time a man raises his voice? Tears stung her eyes. You don't get to ask me that. Someone should have, he said quietly, a long time ago. Her throat tightened. Why do you care? Because I know what it's like to live afraid of someone who's supposed to protect you. She blinked. Who? He hesitated. Then, my father. It was the first personal thing he'd ever told her. She exhaled shakily. So that's why you do what you do? Control everyone else before they control you? He didn't deny it. It works. And you call that peace? He met her gaze, voice low. It's survival. Something broke in her, then a mix of anger, pain, and recognition. Without thinking, she walked straight up to him. You don't scare me anymore, Nikolai. He tilted his head. You should. Why? Because you have power? Because you kill people? Because you think you own me? His jaw tightened. Because I'm losing control around you. Her breath caught. Then he stepped closer, slow, deliberate. You want honesty? Fine. I haven't stopped thinking about you since that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see you shaking in that storm. And I don't know if I want to comfort you or keep you there forever. Her heart pounded. That's not normal. No, he said softly, but it's real. And when his hand found her jaw again, she didn't stop him this time. The kiss that followed wasn't an accident, it was surrender. Later, when she lay tangled in the sheets, staring at the ceiling, she realized something horrifyingly beautiful. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her husband. Not of being alone. But of what she was becoming, the kind of woman who could fall for a man made of shadows and blood. When she turned her head, Nikolai was already watching her. Don't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like you own me. He reached over, tracing his thumb along her lips. You think you still have a choice? Her breath caught. Do I? His eyes softened just slightly. You always do. You just won't like either option. The next morning, she woke up alone. On the nightstand, a single note. Don't open the door, they're coming. And for the first time since she met him, she realized something chilling. Nikolai Vale hadn't lost control. He'd planned everything. Even this. The first scream came from the hallway. Then, the crash, a door splintering. Lila jolted upright, heart pounding, Nikolai's warning echoing in her head. Don't open the door, they're coming. The penthouse lights flickered. She froze, the air charged with that eerie stillness before chaos erupts. Gunfire. One shot, then another. Close. Too close. She stumbled out of bed, her bare feet slipping against the cold floor. Every instinct screaming run, but there was nowhere to go. The walls that had once made her feel safe now felt like a cage. A voice shouted from outside, not Nikolai's. He's not here! Take her! Her blood turned to ice. Before she could think, the bedroom door slammed open. Two men in black tactical gear stormed in, masks covering their faces. One grabbed her wrist, the other covered her mouth. She kicked, screamed nothing but muffled gasps. Boss said alive, one grunted, no marks. Her mind flashed white. Boss? Nikolai's enemies. They dragged her through the living room, her vision blurring through tears. Shattered glass crunched underfoot, and she saw it blood-streaked across the marble, a guard's body motionless near the elevator. Then an explosion of motion. A gunshot, one of her captors jerked backward, collapsing instantly. The other froze. And Nikolai Vale stepped through the smoke. He looked like Death in Motion shirt, half unbuttoned, blood on his sleeve, gun steady in his hand. His voice was low, guttural, calm. Put her down. The man holding her sneered. You're outnumbered, Vale. Count again. 3 more of Nikolai's men appeared behind him, weapons raised. It was over in seconds. The last gunman fell, the sound of his body hitting the floor muffled by the ringing in her ears. When the smoke cleared, Nikolai lowered his weapon and looked at her. You're hurt, he said, stepping forward. She shook her head, trembling. You told me not to open the door. I didn't think you would. His tone was quiet, but his eyes were volcanic. He holstered the gun, closed the distance between them, and brushed a streak of blood from her cheek, not hers. "You're safe now." "No," she whispered. "No, I'm not. You said they wouldn't find me." "They weren't supposed to." "So what happened?" she demanded. "You're supposed to be in control of everything, remember? You said no one could get in here without you knowing." His jaw tightened. "Someone betrayed me." Hours later, the bodies were gone. The glass was replaced. The penthouse looked spotless again. But it wasn't the same. Neither was she. She sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at her trembling hands. Nikolai paced across the room, phone pressed to his ear. "Who gave the location?" he asked coldly. "No, I don't care how you found out. Just bring me the name." His tone was detached, lethal, the kind that made men on the other end stammer apologies. When he hung up, she asked softly, "Was it one of your men?" He nodded. "An old one. I'll handle it." She frowned. "Handle it how?" He met her eyes, silent. She looked away. "Right. Stupid question." He stepped closer. "You think I enjoy it?" "You kill people, Nikolai. It's kind of your thing." "It's my survival." Her voice cracked. "And mine?" His expression softened for a fraction. "Your survival is my responsibility now." "I never asked you to make it that." He tilted his head. "You didn't have to." They didn't speak for hours. Lila sat in silence while Nikolai worked, typing, calling, ordering. Every word he said dripped with quiet fury. Then her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She frowned, hesitated, then answered. "Lila Hart?" The voice was male, smooth, calm. "Who is this?" she asked. "Someone who wants to help you. You're in danger." Her stomach twisted. "I know." "Not from us, from him." She froze. "What are you talking about?" "You think Vale's saving you? He's using you. You were never a random act of mercy, sweetheart. You were bait." Her blood ran cold. "That's not true." "You sure? Ask him about the Santoro trial. Ask him what he told the judge before you disappeared from that case file." The line went dead. She stared at the phone, pulse hammering in her ears. Santoro trial. A name she hadn't heard in years. She found him in the office, sleeves rolled, tie gone, papers spread across the desk. "You knew," she said. He didn't look up. "Knew what?" "Who I was, the trial, the Santoro case. You knew before you ever showed up at my door." He paused. Slowly, he looked up. "Who called you?" "Answer me," she shouted. "Was I just another job, some pawn in your war?" His voice stayed calm, too calm. "Who called you?" "That doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Her heart pounded. "You can't do this." He stood suddenly, slamming his hand against the desk hard enough to make her flinch. "I warned you never to answer unknown numbers." "I'm not your property." "Then stop acting like someone trying to get herself killed." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. She took a shaky step back. "So, it's true." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. "You were never supposed to be part of this." Her voice trembled. "Then why me?" He looked up, eyes dark and unguarded now. "Because I watched you once years ago. You testified against a man my enemies protected. You were brave. Stupid, but brave. I made sure no one touched you." "So, you've been following me ever since?" "Protecting," he corrected. She laughed bitterly. "You call this protection?" He stepped closer, frustration bleeding through his composure. "You have no idea what your name means in my world. You kept the wrong people in prison. You made enemies you'll never even see. If I hadn't stepped in, you'd already be dead." "I was living before you came," she said. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. He froze. Then, quieter. And was it worth dying for? Her voice broke. Maybe. For the first time, he looked shaken. That night, she packed one small duffel bag, cash, clothes, nothing else. She waited until the apartment lights dimmed, until the cameras blinked off for their nightly reset. Her heart hammered in her chest as she typed the elevator code she'd seen reflected once in the glass door. The door slid open. She almost made it to the street. Almost. Going somewhere? His voice froze her mid-step. She turned slowly. He was leaning against the wall near the elevator, hands in his pockets, that calm, deadly smile back on his lips. "How long have you been standing there?" she whispered. "Long enough to know you didn't mean it when you said you trusted me." "I did," she said quietly, "until I realized you never trusted me back." Nikolai's jaw flexed. "You think I don't trust you? I let you live here. I gave you my name, my security, Your prison!" she snapped. "You didn't save me, Nikolai. You just built a prettier cage." Something in him cracked, then a flash of hurt beneath the fury. "Do you have any idea what I've done to keep you alive?" he growled. "How many lines I've crossed? How many bodies I've buried because of you? I never asked you to." "No," he said softly. "But you made me want to." Her throat tightened. He stepped forward, close enough that she could feel his breath. "You opened your door for me, Lila. You didn't just save a man that night. You woke something that doesn't go back to sleep." Her tears spilled over. "Then maybe you should have stayed dead." He flinched like she'd hit him. And for a second, neither spoke. Then, without another word, he turned and walked past her out into the rain-soaked night, leaving the door open behind him. She didn't sleep. The apartment felt colder than ever. Emptier. She sat on the floor, staring at the spot where he'd stood, her mind torn between fear and longing. When dawn came, the phone buzzed again. A text. Unknown number. "You wanted freedom, now you'll pay for it." Her stomach twisted. Another buzz. "Vale's not here to protect you anymore." Her breath caught. The front door creaked. Footsteps. And suddenly she realized she'd made the wrong choice. The last thing Lila remembered clearly was the sound of rain against the window. Then darkness. Not sleep. Not peace. Just the jolt of being grabbed. Hands. Voices. The smell of gasoline and damp cloth. A bag pulled over her head. Her scream cut short by something pressed against her mouthcloth, chemical, burning. Then, nothing. When she woke, her throat was raw. She tried to move, wrists bound, ankles tied. Her head throbbed. A dim light flickered overhead, revealing concrete walls, rust, shadows. The air was cold, wet. A basement. Or a warehouse. She was sitting on a metal chair, her arms numb from the ropes. Somewhere nearby, water dripped slowly. Her voice came out hoarse. "Hello?" No answer. Her heart hammered. She tried to remember how they'd gotten in, how long she'd been out, but her memory was a blur. Then she heard the sound. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. A door creaked open, and two men walked in, one tall, one shorter, both dressed in black suits. Their faces were visible, confident. "Miss Hart," the taller one said, his voice deep, accented, "you've caused quite the storm." She swallowed hard. "What do you want?" "The same thing everyone wants," he said. "Information." "I don't have any." "Oh, I think you do." He stepped closer, crouching so their eyes met. His breath smelled faintly of cigars and expensive wine. "You've been living with Vale, haven't you?" Lila froze. He smiled faintly. Don't bother denying it. We have photos, cameras. Your little act of kindness put you in a very dangerous position. Her pulse spiked. I didn't know who he was when I helped him. Doesn't matter. You helped him, which means you're now part of him. He stood, adjusting his jacket. So, here's how this works. You tell us where he's hiding his new shipment, or we find out the messy way. I don't know anything, she pleaded. I'm not part of his world. The shorter man smirked. You live under his protection. You think he doesn't talk to you? He doesn't tell me anything. The tall man tilted his head. You're lying, but that's all right. Everyone lies before they break. He nodded to the other man, who left the room briefly. When he returned, he held something that made her blood turn to ice. Her phone. You've got a direct line to him, the tall man said. Let's use it. He tossed the phone onto the table, still locked. Call him. I can't. Then he'll call you. Hours passed. They left her alone, tired, cold, hungry, terrified. Every creak of the door made her flinch. She tried to keep her breathing steady, but panic clawed at her throat. At some point, she whispered to herself, He'll come. She didn't know if she believed it. Meanwhile, across the city, Nikolai Vale stood in his office surrounded by men, eyes fixed on the glowing phone screen that showed her location blinking on a map. 3 miles out, one of his men said. Old Dock Warehouse, North Pier. Are they armed? Nikolai asked. Like an army. Then we bring a war. He holstered his gun, grabbed a second from the desk, and looked at his men, the kind of look that promised blood. No survivors, he said quietly. Lila's head jerked up at the sound engines outside, multiple cars stopping. Voices. Movement. The men guarding her exchanged glances. One went to the door, muttered into a radio. What is it? The tall one barked. Someone's here. Who? The man didn't answer because the door exploded inward. Gunfire. Shouting. The light swung wildly as bullets ripped through the walls. Lila ducked, screaming, the chair toppling with her still tied to it. Through the chaos, she heard it, that voice she knew too well. Move! Nikolai. He was a blur of motion, black coat, gun in hand, eyes blazing with fury. He shot one man before he could even aim. The tall one tried to grab her as a shield, but Nikolai was faster. One clean shot to the shoulder, and he dropped. When the gunfire stopped, all that remained was the echo of rain against the roof. Nikolai rushed to her, cutting the ropes with a knife. Are you hurt? She could barely speak. I'm fine. He pulled her to her feet, steadying her. You're safe now. She looked at the bodies. They're dead. They deserved worse. Nikolai. He turned to her sharply. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the monster they said I was. Her throat tightened. You killed them. They were going to kill you. Her voice cracked. You can't just keep saving me by destroying everything around you. His jaw clenched. That's the only way I know how. He led her outside, where his men were finishing off the last of the ambush. Flames licked the sky, one of the cars burning from an explosion. The air smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Nikolai opened the back door of a waiting car, guiding her in. She hesitated. Where are we going? Somewhere safer. She shook her head. No. I can't keep doing this. He turned to her. You don't have a choice anymore. Yes, I do. He leaned in close. Lila, they won't stop. They'll come for you again and again, until there's nothing left to take. She looked up at him, voice trembling. And what about you? Who's coming for you? He smiled faintly. Everyone. And what happens when they win? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small phone, the same one she'd used before. If I don't make it out one day, he said quietly, press this button. It'll erase everything tied to me. Every account, every name. You'll disappear too. Her breath caught. You really think I'd want that? I think it's the only way you'll ever be free. She shook her head, tears streaking her face. I don't want to be free if it means losing you. He froze. For the first time, the man who never flinched at violence or death looked human. Then he said softly, Don't say that, Lila. Why not? Because it sounds like hope, and hope gets people killed. They drove in silence for nearly an hour. The storm had died down, replaced by a soft drizzle. The world outside the tinted windows looked blurred, dreamlike. Lila leaned her head against the glass, eyes heavy, exhaustion pulling her under. When she woke, the car had stopped. They were at a house old, secluded, surrounded by trees. He helped her out, his hand warm on her back. Inside, the fire was already lit. Blankets, food, and clothes were waiting. It felt almost normal. Almost. He poured her a glass of water, handed it over. Drink. She obeyed. Her hands still trembled. Thank you, she whispered. He sat across from her, elbows resting on his knees. You should sleep. I'm afraid to. You're safe here. She looked at him for a long time. You keep saying that, but are you? His eyes flicked to the window, always watching, always calculating. I don't think I've been safe since I was 10 years old, he said quietly. What happened? He hesitated, then said, My father was a killer. My mother tried to leave him. He made sure she never did. Lila's chest tightened. Nikolai. He looked up at her, voice low. I learned one thing that night. If you love something, you either protect it or destroy it before someone else does. That's not love, she whispered. He gave a faint, bitter smile. It's the closest thing I know. The fire crackled. Rain tapped gently on the windows. She got up slowly, walked over to him, and knelt beside his chair. He looked down at her, surprise flickering behind his cold composure. You saved me, she said softly. Not just tonight. From everything. From him. From myself. He touched her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear. I don't save people, he said quietly. I keep them alive. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. Then keep me. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, finally, his hand slid behind her neck, pulling her close. The kiss was softer this time, slow, broken, human. When it ended, he rested his forehead against hers. You don't belong in my world, he murmured. Then make it mine, she whispered back. Outside, the storm had stopped. But somewhere in the distance, engines roared the sound of another war beginning. Nikolai's phone buzzed once on the table, the screen flashing a single message. They found the safe house. And the peace they'd built, however fragile, shattered all over again. The first explosion shook the windows. Lila bolted upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. The cabin lights flickered, the fire snapped out, and the air filled with the low growl of distant chaos. She turned toward the door just as Nikolai's phone buzzed again, the same name flashing on the screen, Cade. He answered instantly. Talk. His tone was razor-edged calm. On the other end, the voice came rapid and tense. They hit the South Docks, 4 dead, warehouse gone, someone sold your location, boss. Nikolai's face didn't move. Only his jaw tightened. Who? We don't know yet, but find out. He hung up and turned toward her. Lila stood frozen near the fire, barefoot, wrapped in one of his shirts, eyes wide with fear. What's happening? She asked. He took a breath, then said quietly, They're coming for me. Her pulse spiked. Then we need to run. No, he said flatly. They'll expect that. So what, we just stay here? He stepped closer. You stay here, I go to them. No. His brow lifted slightly. She shook her head, voice breaking. I'm not letting you walk into whatever this is alone. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurt to look at. You think I'm walking into it? No, Lila, I'm bringing it to them. The next 12 hours blurred into madness. News broke before dawn. Explosions across the riverfront. Black plumes rising into the sky. Unmarked cars swarming the streets. To the world, it looked like another gang war. But inside those flames was one man's promise made real. They touched what's mine. Nikolai's men moved like ghosts through the city, taking back every inch his enemies had stolen. Every warehouse, every dock, every trader. He didn't give speeches. He didn't shout. He just pointed, and people died. By mid-morning, 5 rival safe houses had gone dark. By noon, the news anchors were calling it the Vale Reclamation. But to Lila, it was something else entirely, a nightmare. She watched it unfold from the television in the safe house, the screen flickering with aerial footage of smoke and ruin. Reporters whispered about unprecedented violence, about the return of a ghost. Her hands shook as she changed channels, searching for any sign that it was over. It wasn't. Another explosion. Another name whispered. Another life gone. And through it all, her phone remained silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing from him. She wanted to hate him for it. She wanted to scream. But deep down, beneath the fear, was something far worse, the ache of knowing that every fire on that screen was burning for her. Night fell again before the sound of engines reached the cabin. She ran to the window. 4 black SUVs. Headlights slicing through the rain. Her heart stuttered. The door burst open a moment later, not enemies this time. Nikolai's men, soaked and silent. And then him. Blood on his knuckles. Smoke still clinging to his clothes. Eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. He shut the door behind him and looked at her like he didn't believe she was real. You're alive, she whispered. I told you, he said quietly. I don't die easily. She took a step toward him, then stopped. There was something in his expression that froze her. He wasn't just tired. He was empty. What did you do? She asked softly. He didn't answer. She swallowed hard. Nikolai, how many secu? Enough. That's not an answer. He looked up then, eyes blazing. Enough to make sure no one touches you again. Her throat tightened. You killed them all. He didn't deny it. I told you, he said, stepping closer. I warned them what would happen. They didn't listen. This isn't protection, she whispered. This is revenge. Call it what you want. You're alive. That's all that matters. She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. You can't keep destroying everything just to keep me safe. He grabbed her wrist gently, not in anger, but desperation. You don't understand, Lila. I don't choose this. I can't. She looked at him, voice trembling. Then who are you doing this for? Me or yourself? His silence said everything. He turned away, pressing a hand to the table to steady himself. Blood dripped from a cut on his palm. Without thinking, she reached for him. You're hurt. It's nothing. Let me see. He pulled back. Don't. Nikolai. Don't. The sharpness in his tone cut through her, and for a second, neither moved. Then his shoulders dropped. I'm sorry, She took his hand anyway, ignoring the way he tried to hide it. The cut was deep, jagged, fresh. Sit down, she said quietly. He didn't argue. She cleaned the wound, her fingers brushing his skin, the air heavy with unspoken things. When she finally wrapped the bandage, she looked up and said softly, "You can't keep doing this to yourself." He met her eyes. "And what am I supposed to do? Pretend I'm something I'm not?" "Pretend you still have a soul," she whispered. He froze. Her voice trembled. "Because if you don't, then what was all this for?" He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes on the floor. "You remember what I told you about my father?" She nodded. "He used to say that power means never needing forgiveness. I spent my whole life proving him wrong, and then you came along." Her chest tightened. What changed? He looked up, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "You made me want to be forgiven." The silence after that was suffocating. She reached out slowly, touching his face. "Then stop fighting the whole world." He caught her hand, pressed it to his lips. "I can't." "Yes, you can." His eyes softened. "You think love fixes men like me?" "No," she whispered, "but it might save what's left." He smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who hasn't seen what I've done." "Then show me." He blinked. "What?" "Show me who you really are. All of it. I won't run." He studied her for a long, quiet moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Be careful what you ask for, Lila." The next day, he took her into the city. The skyline still smoked from the fires he'd started. They drove in silence through the streets, some empty, some filled with sirens and flashing lights. He showed her the dock's blackened ruins where warehouses once stood. He showed her the offices' shattered windows, scorched walls, silent men guarding corners. Everywhere she looked, she saw what it cost to love a man like him. And when they stopped at a small unmarked building by the pier, she asked quietly, "What is this place?" He said nothing as he opened the door. Inside were ledgers, photos, documents, the entire empire laid bare. "This is everything I've built," he said, "and everything I'll destroy before anyone else can take it." She turned to him, stunned. "You'd burn it all?" "For you," he said simply. Her breath caught. "That's not love, Nikolai. That's madness." He smiled sadly. "Maybe they're the same thing." That night, as the city burned behind them, Lila realized something terrifying. He wasn't fighting for control anymore. He was fighting for her. And he didn't care what it cost. When they returned to the cabin, Nikolai poured himself a drink. He sat by the fire, silent, lost in thought. Lila sat across from him, watching the flames dance in his eyes. She whispered, "So, what now?" He didn't look at her. "Now we wait for the last enemy to move." "And then?" "Then it ends." "How?" He looked up at her, voice like gravel. "One of us doesn't walk away." She crossed the room, knelt in front of him, and took his hands. "You don't have to die to prove anything." He looked at her like she was light he'd never seen before. "Maybe not," he said softly, "but if I don't, they'll come for you." Her throat tightened. "Then let them. I'm not running anymore." He smiled faintly, eyes glimmering in the firelight. "You were never running, Lila. You were just waiting for the right place to hide." She shook her head. "You were the wrong place." He leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. "Then why does it feel like home?" Outside, thunder rolled again. And somewhere in the distance, a single phone began to ring. A sound that would drag them both into the endgame. Neither of them could escape. Would you let someone burn the world to keep you safe? Or would you stop them, even if it meant losing them forever? Tell me in the comments what your heart says. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Nikolai didn't move at first, just stared at it, the flickering firelight carving sharp shadows across his face. Lila whispered, "Aren't you going to answer it?" He finally picked it up. "Vale." The voice on the other end was cautious. We found him. Nikolai's hand tensed. Who? The one who sold you out. Alive? For now. Keep him that way. I'm coming. He hung up and stood, grabbing his coat. Where are you going? Lila asked, rising to her feet. To finish this. Not without me. He turned, eyes dark. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the night you walked into my life covered in blood. For a second, he looked at her, really looked. The defiance, the fear, the loyalty she didn't even understand herself. Then he nodded once. Stay close. The drive was silent, the air thick with tension. Rain fell in sheets, tapping against the windshield like a heartbeat. They pulled into an abandoned industrial district, the city lights fading behind them. Inside one of the warehouses, two of Nikolai's men waited beside a chair and the man tied to it. A thin, nervous figure, face swollen from a beating, one eye nearly shut. Lila stood frozen near the doorway as Nikolai stepped forward. Who paid you? He asked. The man spat blood onto the floor. You already know. Nikolai didn't raise his voice. Tell me anyway. The man coughed a bitter laugh. You think you're the only one who wants her? Lila's stomach twisted. Me? The man looked up at her, smiling through bloodied teeth. You really don't know, do you? Nikolai's jaw clenched. Don't talk to her. But the man kept going. You think he just showed up on your doorstep that night? You think it was chance? No, sweetheart, he's been watching you for years. Lila's breath caught. What is he talking about? Nikolai's silence was her answer. The man grinned. Ask him. Ask him why he really came to you. She turned to him, voice trembling. Tell me he's lying. He didn't. Please, Nikolai. He exhaled slowly, as if every breath hurt. Get him out of here. His men dragged the informant away. The door slammed shut. And then there was only silence broken by the rain tapping against the tin roof. Lila stood there, shaking. How long? He looked down. Since the trial. The Santoro case? He nodded once. Her chest ached. You knew who I was that night? Yes. You came to me on purpose? He didn't move. Yes. Her eyes filled with tears. You lied to me. I protected you. You used me. His voice rose, sharp. I saved your life. By destroying it, she shouted back. Everything I thought was real, every time I thought you cared, it was all part of your plan? He stepped forward, desperate now. There was no plan, Lila. There was you. She shook her head. Then tell me why. He took a breath, then said quietly, because they were going to kill you. Her body went still. He continued, voice low, trembling with restraint. You think I didn't see it? That night at the courthouse, when you testified, you exposed a man who belonged to the Santoro family. They wanted you gone. I made sure you vanished instead. You hid me? She whispered. I erased your name, changed your records, paid off the right people. You disappeared, Lila, and they stopped looking. Her voice cracked. All this time, I thought I just started over. You did, he said softly. I just made sure you lived long enough to try. She sank down onto a crate, shaking. You watched me all this time? He nodded once. From a distance, until that night. The night you showed up at my door. I was ambushed, shot. I didn't mean to go there, but when I saw your address on the street sign, I thought, maybe it was time you knew. Her tears spilled over. You should have stayed away. I couldn't. Why? She whispered. His voice broke when he answered. Because the first time I saw you standing on that witness stand, shaking but refusing to back down. I knew you were braver than anyone I'd ever met, and I knew I'd never forget your face. Lila's throat tightened. That's not love, Nikolai. That's obsession. Maybe, he said softly, but it's the only thing that's ever made me want to be better. She stood and turned away, tears falling freely now. He walked closer, his voice rough. You want to hate me? Fine, but you're still alive because of me. I didn't ask to be your project. He flinched. You weren't. Then what am I? He didn't answer. She turned back toward him, shaking. I don't know what's worse, that you've been watching me all this time, or that part of me still wants to believe you care. He stepped forward slowly, stopping just inches from her. I do care, he said, but I'm not the kind of man who deserves forgiveness. She stared up at him, voice trembling. Then stop pretending you want it. His expression hardened, not in anger, but in pain. Maybe I don't, he said quietly. Maybe I just wanted to know what it felt like to be seen, not feared. For a moment, neither moved. Then Lila whispered, You could have had that. You could have told me the truth. I wanted to, he said. Every time you looked at me like I wasn't a monster, I wanted to tell you. But I knew the moment I did, you'd never look at me that way again. Her eyes glistened. You were right. The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Minutes passed. He leaned against the table, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. She wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt enough. Finally, she whispered, So what now? He looked up. Now you go. You take the money in the drawer, the car outside, and you disappear for real this time. And you? I stay. She shook her head. No. You can't end it like this. He smiled faintly. It ended the day I walked into your apartment. She stepped closer, voice breaking. Don't do this. I already did. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small folded piece of paper, a passport photo, her new name printed beneath it. I had it made months ago, he said, in case things went bad. Her hands shook as she took it. Why would you plan for this? Because I knew one day you'd hate me enough to leave. The lights flickered again. Outside, thunder rolled. Then gunfire. Lila froze. What was that? Nikolai turned toward the window, jaw tightening. They found us. She stepped back. What do we do? He loaded his gun, calm and steady. We finish what I started. You can't fight them all. He gave a faint, almost haunting smile. Watch me. The next moments blurred into chaos. Windows shattered. Bullets tore through the walls. Nikolai pulled her to the ground, shielding her with his body. Stay down, he shouted. His men returned fire, shouting orders. Smoke filled the air. Lila covered her ears, trembling, her vision swimming in flashes of light and sound. She felt his hand on her back, steadying her, then pulling her toward the back door. They ran through the hall, down a narrow stairwell, out into the rain. Cars burned in the distance. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond. When they reached the car, he shoved the keys into her hand. Go. What about you? I'll hold them off. No, she cried, grabbing his arm. Not this time. I'm not leaving you. He cupped her face, eyes fierce. Lila, listen to me. You don't owe me your life. You owe yourself your future. Her tears spilled over. And what about you? He smiled softly. I already found mine. Then he kissed her hard, desperate, final. And before she could stop him, he turned and ran back into the storm. She sat in the car for a long time, hands gripping the wheel, watching the fire spread across the sky. Each explosion echoed like a heartbeat, fading into silence. When it was over, the night was too quiet. She whispered his name once just to hear it. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something move, a figure limping through the smoke. Nikolai. Bloody. Burned. But alive. He fell against the car door, collapsing beside it. She was out of the vehicle in seconds, catching him as he sank to the ground. He looked up at her with a faint smile. Told you I don't die easily. She laughed through her tears. You idiot. He winced, closing his eyes. You're crying. You almost died. He smirked weakly. Worth it. She pressed her forehead to his. You're not allowed to leave me again. He breathed out, slow and shaky. Then don't let me. I won't. For the first time, neither of them was lying. The city was still burning when dawn broke. Smoke curled above the skyline, drifting like ghosts over rooftops. Lila stood at the window of the safe house, wrapped in one of Nikolai's shirts, her reflection pale in the glass. He was still asleep behind her, or pretending to be. The painkillers dulled his injuries, but not the silence between them. She turned to him. His face was softer in sleep, younger somehow, like the weight of his empire had finally slipped for a moment. But the phone on the nightstand kept vibrating. Non-stop. Messages. Missed calls. Names she didn't know. His world, refusing to die. She walked over and turned it face down. He stirred slightly. They won't stop calling, he murmured, voice rough. Then let them. He smiled faintly without opening his eyes. That's not how this world works. Then burn it, she whispered. End it. Walk away. He opened his eyes slowly, meeting hers. I told you before, he said softly. This ends when I say. Then say it, she pleaded. Say it now. He stared at her for a long time, like he was trying to memorize her face. Then he reached for her hand. I will, he said quietly, but you have to promise me something first. What? When I'm gone, you don't come looking. She shook her head instantly. No. Lila. I can't lose you again. His fingers tightened around hers. You won't, but you can't save a man who built his life on fire. By midday, the streets were crawling with sirens and armored vehicles. Federal task forces. Rival crews. Reporters. Everyone wanted a piece of what was left of him. Nikolai stood in front of the mirror, buttoning a black shirt, the kind he wore when he expected blood. Lila leaned against the doorway, silent. He caught her reflection in the glass. You shouldn't be here. I'm not leaving you. He sighed. You'll die if you stay. Then I'll die knowing I didn't run. That made him stop. He turned to her slowly, his expression unreadable. You remind me of her, he said softly. Who? My mother. Lila's heart tightened. She wasn't afraid either, he continued. Even when my father broke her spirit, she'd look at him and say, You can't kill what was born brave. He stepped closer. You were born brave too, Lila. That's what I hate most about loving you. She blinked back tears. Why hate it? Because brave people always die first. They didn't say much after that. He left orders for his men short, efficient, final. Every property, every account, every contact. He liquidated it all. The money would go to charities under false names. The safe houses would be burned. The weapons buried. When he was done, he stood before the fireplace, holding the last ledger in his hands, the one that held every name, every secret, every sin. Lila approached him quietly. Is that all of it? He nodded. Everything I ever built. What will you do with it? He smiled faintly. What I should have done years ago. He struck a match. The flame caught instantly, swallowing the pages whole. She watched as years of power turned to ash before her eyes. You just erased yourself, she whispered. He turned to her, his face lit by the fire's glow. That's the point. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft, cleansing. They sat together in the dim light, the storm muffling the world. She rested her head against his shoulder. So, what happens now? He was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, now I find out if a man like me can start over. And me? She asked softly. You already did, he said, kissing her hair. The night you opened your door. But peace doesn't come easy. When the knock came hours later, they both knew it wasn't friendly. Nikolai stood, calm as ever, sliding his gun from the holster. Lila rose too, heart racing. Don't. He looked back, a faint smile playing at his lips. Don't what? Don't do this alone. He walked toward her, cupped her face in his blood-stained hand, and whispered, You've already done enough. Then he opened the door. The air outside was cold, full of sirens and flashing red lights in the distance. 3 black SUVs. Federal agents. The man in front gray suit, clean cut, raised a badge. Nikolai Vale, you're under arrest. Nikolai didn't resist. He just nodded once, calm. Took you long enough. Lila stood frozen behind him. Don't, he murmured softly, without turning around. If you come out, they'll take you too. I don't care. He looked over his shoulder, eyes gentle. Yes, you do. You just don't remember how yet. Her tears fell silently as they cuffed him. Before they put him in the car, he leaned toward the nearest agent and said something too quiet to hear. The man frowned, then nodded once. The cars drove away into the rain. Lila stood there long after the taillights vanished. 2 weeks later, she received a letter. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in dark ink. Inside was a folded note and a photo of him taken years ago. The note read, The final rule, if you love something enough to set it free, make sure it never has to run again. N.V. Below it was another line, smaller, like a whisper meant for her alone. Wait for me when the lilacs bloom. Her hands trembled as she read it, tears staining the paper. She looked out the window, the garden below still gray from winter. And for the first time since he left, she smiled. Because spring always comes. Months passed. The world moved on. The Mafia was dismantled. Nikolai Vale's empire became nothing more than a rumor told in bars. And one warm morning, as Lila unlocked the bakery door for work, a man's shadow fell across the sidewalk. She turned and froze. Black suit, dark hair, a faint scar near his temple. He looked thinner, older, freer. Miss me? He asked quietly. Her eyes filled instantly. You're supposed to be dead. He smiled faintly. I was. Until I remembered I had something worth coming back for. She stepped forward, trembling. How? He shrugged. They made a deal. I gave them every name, every file, everything but one thing. What? You. Her throat closed. You walked away from everything. He nodded. I told you it ends when I say. And now? He took her hand, pressing it to his chest. Now I say it's over. That night, they sat on the bakery roof under the stars. No guards. No guns. Just quiet. She looked at him, the man who had once ruled the city, now sitting barefoot beside her, laughing at nothing. What happens next? She asked softly. He leaned back, eyes on the night sky. We live. She smiled faintly. That's it? That's everything. The next morning, the first lilacs of spring bloomed by her window. She found another napkin on the counter. 3 words. Next time, stay. And for the first time, She did.